Hi, I'm Sandra Champlain, here to present The Afterlife is Real. Now, do I want you to believe every word that I say? Well, yes and no. Each of us as human beings are on our own journey. And I think afterlife is one of those topics where someone just can't give you the magic formula, can't tell you what they know and that you absolutely believe it. If you think about people, man or woman, that are self made millionaires, they worked very, very hard for their money and they have a relationship with their belongings. And that comes from what they made from themselves versus, say, someone that was just given a bunch of money. The respect for the money, the journey to get there really is different by how we go. So today, yes, I will be sharing with you why I believe in the afterlife. And I'm hoping, what I'm really hoping is just to ignite something within you, that you start having the faith, the confidence, but don't believe a word I say until you go on your own investigation. Now, I have to tell you, some of the things that I'm going to present to you now are going to seem so absolutely ridiculous. And know that we each have this skeptical mind. And it's not bad to have skepticism. I mean, it keeps us safe. There are plenty of charlatans out there, and some weirdos will just say that. So, to be skeptical is not a bad thing, but don't be closed that it isn't possible. It's pretty funny. I have a picture here of a fish in a fish tank. And little Mr. Fish could be living his life. Maybe he lives in a tank and he's got some nice underwater trees or some coral, or maybe a bridge to swim under. And talking to another fish, he might say, "This is it. I've got a great life. Food just magically shows up and it's great." And the other fish might say, "But you're living in a tank. Outside of this tank, there's a room. There's books, there's a television, there's people, and for those fishes, that might be all there is." Now, a skeptical fish is open that there is something outside beyond what he sees and beyond what he knows. Now, neither fish know that beyond that room that they're in, there's a house, there's a world, there's oceans, there's billions of planets, there's so much more. So while we're here together, I'm just asking you to be open. Don't be the fish that just thinks this is it, there's nothing else. Be open to the what if. Okay? So here we go on our journey. Why believe me? Who am I? Well, my name is Sandra, as I told you. And back in the mid 90s, I went through an incredible fear of dying. I didn't know what would happen to me after I took that very last breath. Why did it come as a fear? I don't know. I think all of us humans at some point really start questioning life, start questioning the afterlife, start asking questions: what is my life for? So, very secretly, I went on this journey to find some evidence, something that I could believe in to rest my fears. I'm grateful to say I found it. I studied all kinds of things, from religion to science to some of the craziest things. I even took a course in mediumship and remote viewing and electronic voice phenomena, and so much more. So I found this world, never told anybody about it because I think we humans have this need to be liked. And I really thought if I started saying these things that I believe in and these things that I've learned, that I would lose my family and I'd lose my friends. So I kept my mouth shut. Fast forward to 2010, my dear dad gets diagnosed with cancer, and 5 months later, he takes his last breath. It was one of the most painful, excruciating times in my life. Not only did dad die, but we became one of those families, my siblings and I, that fought about everything, about his care in the final days, and then belongings and all those kind of things. And us perfectly good, normal people turned into monsters. I hit an all-time low as a human being. I was not going to end my own life. I didn't really consider that, but I was in such a deep state that I had full compassion for what a mind is like, grieving very, very deeply, and how ending it seemed like a possibility. So I got that the world of grief was something absolutely excruciatingly painful. And from that deep, dark place that I was in, there was almost like the light bulb that went off in my mind that said, this isn't who I am. Why does grief have to hurt so bad? What is grief? And so I went on this journey to really discover the world of grief. And you might be brought here today because you have a loved one that is no longer walking the planet and you are feeling that pain. You could have been brought here by having a fear of dying, just like me, or that you start questioning, what is our life for? Those kind of things. So out of this, I opened up a world of what grief is, why we human beings feel it, put basically, probably a bad comparison, but love is, I'm going to say this, an addiction, like a good one. But when we love people, we are chemically attached to them. And when we lose that, we go through a withdrawal process. And it's very, very difficult, as you know, or you can imagine if someone is coming off of a drug, say, and they go through that withdrawal process, their mind isn't clear. It takes a long time before our neurotransmitters, our bodies, all the different things that make us who we are, for them to become whole again. And that's part of the grieving process. And so I realized that the fights that the siblings and I were having, all of this had to do with our minds, our biology not being whole. So I created an audio called How to Survive Grief, and I launched it for free. And within just a few short months, several thousand people all over the world had heard it. And not only did they hear it, but they really listened. I started getting emails from people how they could better communicate with their loved ones, how it helped ease their pain. And then I started getting emails that I chose not to commit suicide because of the words in this audio. So I felt like I had a moral responsibility to share, and share I did. I became courageous and wrote a book knowing that most people aren't normally looking for grief information. I wrote a book about all the information I had collected at that time, as it was back in 2013, about the afterlife, boldly titled it We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. And strategically, I slid in chapter 10 is that grief audio with even more information. And then the rest of the book is If We Don't Die, Who Are We and What Is Our Life For? And so since then, that was 2013, this is now 2020, and I'm happy to tell you I still have been on this search for good evidence of the afterlife and helping people live a powerful life and helping us get through that grief. I started a radio show, a podcast called We Don't Die Radio, interviewing men and women from around the world, why they believe in the afterlife, a little bit about grief and how to live a powerful life while we're here. And we are approaching 350 episodes. Pretty amazing. So I've collected a lot in this last almost 25 years. Again, am I an expert? No, there's always more to be discovered, always. So I want to go through some things with you now. I want to show you a picture of these guys and gal, and they have guns and they look pretty scary. And this picture was taken back in the 1800s. What if we showed them Google, Netflix, iTunes, our wireless device, our iPad? What if we showed them modern day refrigerators and televisions and automobiles? They would think we are absolutely crazy, right? Well, those things then didn't exist, and any skeptical mind, it's very easy to say they never could. Or maybe the TV would be the devil's box or something like that. It's just progress. Our brains are not made to understand things that are kind of outside of our level of reason. So we're going to go on a little journey. Back in 1878, Alexander Graham Bell, here in this picture, demonstrates the first telephone. And isn't it amazing? We've seen old pictures of telephones and how far we've come. listening to the radio. Wow, people would crowd around and listen to their little box, and that was their entertainment. When the television came about, well, that was absolutely miraculous, right? Black and white at the time, they could actually see people moving. Alexander Graham Bell, back in 1887, first created this device called the gramophone, which would let someone play a record and sound would come out of it, music. I mean, how fascinating. Moving on the world of cameras, the early camera was first invented, I think, well, maybe it was prior to 1800s, but these are pictures of an early camera and a movie camera back in the day. And the first selfie known to have been taken is our friend here, Robert Cornelius. I don't know who he was, but he stood for a minute, very still, to get the very first selfie. Our first calculator showed up in 1939, and check out this portable computer. Yes, in 1979, you could actually travel with one of these devices and use a modern day computer. Well, here we are in 2020, right? Taking selfies, listening to our music, talking on the phone. We have got the world at our fingertips. Now, those guys with the guns couldn't have imagined it, but the way we are as human beings, we have all of these wonderful things and we have come to take them for granted. So I want to show you these guys. Now, Orville and Wilbur, they created the first airplane. And Thomas Edison with electricity and the light bulb. Henry Ford, although he didn't create the first moving carriage, the first automobile, he had a real stand that automobiles would be in every home for every person in the household, let me say that, and to create the assembly line. So people can have big dreams, and unfortunately, a lot of people can badmouth them. In fact, Arthur Schopenhauer has got a great quote. All truth passes through 3 stages. First, it is ridiculed. Second, it is violently opposed. Third, it is accepted as being self-evident. So the way we are as human beings is we think everything is what it is. It's always been. And that's just by nature of being human. Could you imagine this world without any one of those things? Automobiles, lights, or flying. The world wouldn't be what it is. But a lot of people argued with these folks. And a lot of people are arguing right now that there's no evidence of the afterlife and we can't possibly be able to communicate with our loved ones. And go back to that fish. Okay to be skeptical, but do not be resigned that this is the way it is. Moving on, who are we really? So I don't know where you're sitting right now watching this, but if you look around, you see a lot of stuff. Even if you take a look at your own hands, you're real, right? Well, are you? If we took a teeny tiny camera and we went through the molecules that make up us, and we go through into the atoms, and if we had this tiny camera in our atoms, all we would see is nothing. There is invisible. That doesn't make sense, but all that we are is made up of vibrating bits of energy. I think they're called quarks. I'm not sure. So this lady sitting in the lotus position, hoping to meditate and be one with it all. And who she really is all that vibrating energy. And just a little video to play. And that's what makes up us and everything around us. So it is an illusion that we are real. I mean, we feel real, but down to our teeniest little particle, we're made up of just energy. So I'm asking you to consider that the afterlife is energy, and it is this vibrating world around us that, although it's not visible to our eyes, it is very, very much real. So I'm going to go through now some of the reasons I believe. We're going to start off with visual instrumental transcommunication. These are people who are capturing, using technology pictures of people that no longer walk this earth. So you can see George Meek using a water light method, literally recording water and having faces appear. Spirit faces, this is Mark Macy, who is, I think he's still practicing, but I have met him. He would take Polaroid pictures of people using a device, I can't remember what it was called, but as the picture developed, not only your face would appear, but very often a picture of your loved one. In fact, I had a woman sitting next to me. We each got our Polaroid camera pictures in hand, and although mine just looked like a fuzzy picture of me, when hers developed, there was an image of her daughter, and I clearly saw her daughter and herself, and it was amazing. Sonia Rinaldi, we're going to focus on a little bit. She is our friend in Brazil who, for the past 30 plus years, has only been researching and giving away what she does. Never asked for a penny. It's a good sign of being someone honest. And it started out with her. Her husband had passed. She was very interested in science and technology. And she started off with, like, how do I say, chopped up human voices, we'll put it to you that way. And she would play a recording of that. And then she'd also record that. And it became such that she was able to have parents come to her house in Brazil, and she'd have an empty chair. The parent would sit in a chair, and of course, Sonia would be in another chair. And she'd ask the parents to speak to the chair as if their child was sitting in it. She'd press play and hear these bits of garbled voices and record that. And when the recording got played back, the child's voice was there answering the parent's question. She has done thousands of these, like I said, only giving it away, but she's been working really to prove the evidence of the afterlife. So it first started out with audio, and I always wanted to meet her. You know, I always thought, wow, that just sounded so incredible. And a couple of years ago, I actually went to the Afterlife Research and Education Institute's symposium, and there she was talking about now not only getting voices, but getting images of the deceased. What she has been working on since I've known her is this device. She calls this the Milligan experiment, because our good friend, physical and trance medium Scott Milligan, bought her some of these devices while we were at a We Don't Die live event in Boston. But she used what is actually a clear Easter egg mold, and she took these 3 little mini projectors that Scott purchased for her, and she basically sent into the center static energy, like when you get a static TV channel. You can see on the top left, that's kind of what it looked like, all in the middle. There's a picture of Sonia right there. And Nikola Tesla, this picture is interesting. This is before the Milligan project, but with her recordings, she started hearing voices, and people would identify themselves as scientists that are on her team helping her with her technology. So not using the Milligan device, but I think she had used maybe a computer screen turned off or something like that, and was sending this static energy to it. And lo and behold, when she played it back, there's a picture of Nikola Tesla. Now, he has never smiled in a picture while he was alive, but Sonia's got a picture of him there. Sonia, from time to time, would send me pictures of people, and she didn't know who they were, and I would post them in the We Don't Die listener Facebook group. And many people could say, that's my son, that's my daughter, that's my husband. Well, a few pictures started coming that seemed to hit home for me. It looked pretty close to my dad. And although, you know, it's easy for other people to see faces and could it be in my imagination? I think our heart knows when we see someone that we recognize. So I got these pictures from Sonia, and there's a picture of my dad. And I just want to show you, using the Milligan experiment, my dad's picture and how it surfaced. So again, she had these different lights showing, or the different projectors showing into this Easter egg. And so all these energy was blending in the center. And you will be able to see, blacks out for a second. The energy is just coming in. Takes about 20 seconds or so before this comes through. Hold on. And there it is. And there it goes. Very interesting to me to see this in action. And the gentleman who is next to what I believe is my dad, my aunt recognized as my dad's actually uncle, who the two of them were very close. So I thought that was pretty neat. Now the next one I'm going to show you, only show you a couple here, but Kyle is a son of Carolyn Chang, and Caroline has Awake to Oneness Radio. And these are a couple of different videos in here, how his face comes. And here's another one. So I know they happen fast, so I'm going to play those again and again. Pretty cool. Now, a skeptical mind can say that Sonia planted them on there, etc., and so forth. Well, she has done literally thousands of different experiments. She uses now steam and vapor. She does all kinds of things. And if you can just imagine this little woman practicing and experimenting, never asking for a dime, and she has worked and she has reunited children with their parents and husbands and wives. And this picture I'm showing you are actual trans images that Sonia has received. She's done a lot of work working with people, not so much working one-on-one, but she, in fact, I don't know if you know of the website Patreon, Patreon. It's her membership site if you type in Sonia Rinaldi, and she has all of her experiments and she documents them all in e-magazines, and people that have a subscription to her site, which is just $5 a month, you can be part of some of her experiments from time to time, but it gives you access to all of her e-magazines and all this wonderful research that she has done. So it's great to have a faith in the afterlife. It's even better to have a knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's real. If you want to find out more about Sonia and her work, We Don't Die Films with Robert Lyon is in production of the Rinaldi film, of actually filming her at work. Much of the filming's been done. The very last step was to head to Brazil into her laboratory, and then COVID-19 hit. So as soon as the earth clears up a bit, we are going to take a trip down to Brazil and actually be in her studio with her. But you can find out more about her, rinaldiinstitute.org, on Facebook, and of course, Patreon. Can't recommend her enough. So we're going to go through some other things now. And remember, I told you some of this sounds awfully crazy. Well, physical mediumship is something that sounds a little bit out of left field. It dates back, I don't even know how many hundreds of years, but long before there were evidential mediums, there was what's called physical mediumship. People would sit in their parlors and they would sing their hearts out. Families would be together. Very often, like a small red light would be on, or no light at all. And there would be a medium. And I've got a picture of Gordon Higginson there on the bottom left. And he would produce, or they would produce, a substance which is called ectoplasm. Again, seems kind of far out there. And the idea is that a loved one would step into that and become real again. And again, that's one of my investigations that seems so far out there. But I had some really good friends, pretty convinced that this was accurate. And I decided to take a trip out to Banyan Retreat in the UK and sit in one of these seances, they're called, with physical medium Scott Milligan. And much to my surprise and delight, people were reunited with their loved ones. Voices, people felt the touch, shared memories came out. That many, it was in the dark, and many things had glow in the dark tape on them, and it seemed like things were floating around. I'd actually saw children's fingers, and there were no child in the room, and be touched by these fingers. And while this seems really far out there, I put a picture of Dan Aykroyd up there because we hear about Ghostbusters, and a lot of these things that seem too far out there, they really can be. But Dan Aykroyd came from a family of spiritualists, and his great granddad was part of doing these seances. And after he had passed, Dan and his father Dan wrote a book. Dan's father wrote a book called A History of Ghosts, and all about the grandfather's journey and the reality of spiritualism and these real people coming back and having their voices heard again. And Dan took these words like ectoplasm and seance and added them all to the movie Ghostbusters. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote the Sherlock Holmes mystery, actually gave up Sherlock Holmes and made his life about proving the continuity of life after attending some of these really profound seances. Stuart Alexander is a medium. He is recently retired, and Anne Harrison's husband belonged to one of these physical medium circles, and her mother-in-law would be sitting in one of these cabinets, and in the picture it almost looks like a ghost-like person, but this is a relative that had come through. Again, like, this seems so far out there, and there are many physical mediums. There's very few actually in the world that are out, but there's many that claim to be doing really big things. They charge a lot of money, and I don't know if they're necessarily the real deal. I have gotten close as a friend to Scott Milligan and have been studying and investigating his mediumship, both trance and physical. And when things come out that are messages of love, shared memories that no one else could possibly know, when there's a low cost, even though these things seem hard to believe, I just ask that you be open. So physical medium ended up disappearing mostly, or became very, very quiet many years ago. And with the Civil War and all the death from the Spanish flu and the First World War, there was a lot of death. And so a lot of people became con artists and frauds to try to lure people in with physical mediumship, say that their loved one's there, charge a lot of money, and it's like the baby got thrown out with the bathwater. Not many people believe in this, and even those of us who have attended one of these seances, I tell you about it, and you think, it can't possibly be. Just something to consider. That, remember I said we're all made up of energy, and we're living on a planet with billions of stars and other planets around. There is more to life than meets the eye, and there's more to you and me than we know. So just be open. Trance mediumship is people closing their eyes, blending with this unseen world, and letting people talk through their mouths. So I put in the picture of Ghost because anyone who saw that movie, it was pretty incredible how old Patrick Swayze could step into Whoopi Goldberg and be able to deliver a message to the wife. While this is very rare, it is real. There's a place called the Arthur Findlay College that dates back, over 100 years ago, teaching all different sorts of mediumship. And another place I had to go to experience what's real and decide for myself. And I have seen such incredible demonstrations of trance mediumship. Most trance that is the real deal these days it's not the mediumship of you getting to talk to your, say, your deceased spouse. It is people that have lived before that are giving messages of inspiration, answering questions. We've been doing on Friday nights a trance demonstration with Scott, and people get to ask his friend, whoever speaks through him, questions about life, death, the afterlife. And to our skeptical mind, it's very easy to think, oh, Scott's just making this up. But this young man has spent 24 years stilling the mind. And you remember stilling the mind, being silent in your own mind, because that I really believe is the access way to communicate with our loved ones. Jose Madrado, we see him down below. He has gone into trance, eyes closed, and created unbelievable works of art. Eileen Davies is a trance medium and an evidential medium, just an extraordinary woman. And again, regular people outside of work, great sense of humor, down to earth, do something extraordinary, are not pushing it on anyone, are not selling anything for big dollars. And you can feel when there's words of love and inspiration. That's the real deal. Pretty cool. Spirit artists are evidential mediums, and these are people that not only see your loved ones, but they have the gift of artistic ability and they draw a picture. So Rita Berkowitz was kind enough to meet with me after my dad passed and drew a fantastic picture of him, much as he looked like in the Air Force. Dad passed at 74, drew a picture that he looked like mid-20s, and that's the first time I heard we get to be our perfect age, our favorite age when we cross over. She is no longer doing spirit art this way. She has retired, but it's out there. Chris Fitting he's great. He is doing spirit art. Sue Wood has been gracious enough to do an online demonstration, and we have more planned for the future, along with the great medium Paul Jacobs. And to be part of this, we've done it online. She's got a sketch pad, and faces will appear. She'll be drawing them as Paul will be telling about the person. So they're both connected to the same soul, the same person, and they can talk about them and draw pictures. And speaking of which, when we cross over, we are still us. We are still very much us. We're not balls of light, not balls of energy. We are living people filled with our memories. And I think that's great. Near-death experiences. Oh, we love, don't we? We love near-death experiences and hearing these stories. They're very, very different, all kinds of different things. There are some commonalities, seeing the light, hearing beautiful music, many times seeing loved ones. Many people talk about the silver cord. I don't know if you've heard that, but a silver cord connects us to our life here. And while we're still alive, even on that near death, we're not quite crossed over yet. We have not crossed over to see all of it and experience all of it. And of course, our minds probably couldn't get a hold of what all of it means. But until that cord is fully disconnected, we don't know all of it. But with near-death experiences, and we still are connected, so many people have experienced so many wonderful things. My skeptical mind used to just think it's part of the brain shutting down. But doing the research, of course, Dr. Raymond Moody, he coined the term near-death experience. Ken Ring over on the right, he would do documentation and find near-death experiences of people that were blind, never had vision, and they could see and accurately see when they had their near-death experience. They could say what was happening in the operating room, who was waiting in the waiting room, what was happening somewhere else. Really extraordinary. Shared Crossing is created by William Peters, and he's actually training people how to be with your loved one when it's close to their time of passing. Say they're in hospice or very ill, and you can actually be part of their near-death experience with them. Well, it is their death experience actually, because they will cross. And there's so many testimonials of people experiencing their loved one taking their very final journey. And IANS is the most beautiful international association for near-death studies. hosts of this beautiful conference. And boy, I tell you, just they've collected so many different stories and are doing so many great things to really let people know the reality of the afterlife and what near-death experiences are, and really make a community for anyone who's interested. Love IANS. Electronic voice phenomena is using a recorder of some kind and recording what may be called white noise. It could be static energy. It could be these chopped up voices. It could be the sound of a fan playing, could be the sound of a shower or water, and with the intent of talking to our loved ones and having them speak back to us. Doesn't happen overnight. If you can imagine that our loved ones need to learn how to manipulate energy, just as we are trying to figure out and how to listen to it. But Sherry Pearl has some really great advice about how you can do this. Also, Tom and Lisa Butler, they run the atrancc.org, filled with how to connect. Also, our friends at the Soul Phone Foundation are working very hard to bridge that gap through technology. So if you're interested in something like that, I recommend following their footsteps and really, work with your loved one in the unseen world, because it's magnificent. I myself have gotten many of these EVPs that they're called, and even worked with some friends and some other people, and it's amazing. Even hearing dogs barking and all kinds of things, because yes, our loved ones, our dogs, our cats, any of our pets that we've loved will be right there to cross us on that last journey we take in this life. Reincarnation, very controversial. There's much of the world that believes different faiths and things, and there's others that believe that maybe the person is mediumistic themselves and they are tapping into a memory of somebody who once lived. Doesn't matter, I don't think, which side you believe. The fact that there's stories of reincarnation really do lend to the fact that our afterlife is real. I was lucky enough to interview Susan Messino on one of my shows, and at a very young age, her little boy started drawing these pictures and even details of the different floors, the blueprints of the Titanic. Pretty incredible. And he would always draw only 3 of the smokestacks having smoke coming out of them. And when she asked, why not the 4th one? And he said, Mama, that was a dummy stack, and it was built for aesthetics. He didn't use that word, I am, but sure enough, the Titanic only had 3 smokestacks. And I say, if you're interested in this kind of thing, do some research on James Leininger. Induced after-death communication and grief reattachment therapy, those are a way, almost a hypnotic type entryway into an altered state done by trained therapists that can reunite you with your loved one. The people that are doing it these days, Rochelle Wright in her group, in her trained therapists, and Dr. Alan Botkin with inducedadc.com, trained therapists. It is a grief, helping people through grief practice. Dr. Craig Hogan, who's the president of the AREI, Afterlife Research and Education Institute, has a self-guided one that you can do online, selfguided.spiritualunderstanding.org. So again, so easy to be skeptical on things, but once we start really looking into them, the science is there behind the afterlife. Deathbed visitations, it's so comforting to know and to hear these stories that before we take our last breath, our loved ones, angels, people will show up and be there for you. There are millions of different stories from people. You can even probably ask people in your own family if they have heard of this. And Steve Jobs, when he was passing, the last few words, he's looking over, I believe it was his sister's shoulder, and a big smile came to his face. Oh, wow, oh, wow, oh, wow. Martha Atkins, if you want to look up her TED Talk, is a great story. There were three young boys. Back that up. There was a boy who was just about to pass in hospice, and he looked in the corner, and his parents would ask who he's talking to, and they were his imaginary friends, and gave names of three boys that he was playing with. Well, those three boys had lived in that room in hospice just prior to him being there. So we have people that will greet us in those final moments, because I think we're human, that the fear can still be there, and they will help us cross that finish line. And I say help cross that finish line because in these almost 25 years, in all these stories I've heard, death is something where when we take that last breath here and close our eyes for the very last time, we open them and we are surrounded by our loved ones in a world that's very much like this. But it's so real, and our loved ones, our pets are there, and it will make this life seem like just a dream. The last one I'm going to cover here is evidential mediums. These are the most easy to get to for most people. And it's funny because my mom often says, what do you call the guy who graduated bottom in his medical school? Well, the answer is doctor, right? So there are mediums too that range in talent, shall we say. Mediumship and psychic abilities, I believe we can all tap into. I think it's our God-given power of our soul to be able to connect with this unseen world through what I call is the present moment. There are some places that train, like the Arthur Findlay College. They also have online, snui.org. And two of the best tutors that I have found and most readily available are Carrie McLeod and Philip Dykes there on the top left. They run the Spirit and Soul Foundation.co.uk. But there's other great people that you can see here: Eileen Davies, Paul Jacobs, Suzanne Giesman. And I put the Long Island medium up here too, because if you're not familiar with mediumship, you might have seen her on TV. And they have hopefully trained and studied for a long, long time. And they are able to pick up the feelings, thoughts, memories of loved ones in the unseen world that's vibrating around us and give you details. Now, you've got the good, bad, and the ugly. There's people that will say things like, I've got a man here. Who am I talking about? And to the newly grieving, you might say, oh, that's my husband. Well, I want you to look for mediums that all you say is yes, no, or I don't know. You let them do the work. Phil and Carrie teach practice to mediums about how to really bring the information coming in from the unseen world into our own feelings and give the most detailed information that's possible, so that you're really left with, that really was my husband, that really was my son, whoever that may be. So that's just my 2 cents. And I want to tell you that a lot of people often ask me questions, and there's some that are the most frequently asked questions that I get. And so they might be questions that are on your mind as well. And again, it's okay to be skeptical. After over 20 years of me investigating this, sometimes I wake up and I think, did I really experience all that? I think we come into life. Here's the question, what is the purpose of life? And I think that the afterlife is someplace great. And we can call it the before life too. It's before we get here. And I think it's great and wonderful. But I think without having bad, you can't feel good. Without having sadness, you can't feel joy. Without darkness, you can't appreciate the light. I think coming here to Earth is that opportunity for us and our souls to really grow, to experience emotion, to experience love, to be able to forgive. All of those great things happen here. And so it is my real wish to you that you live your life, you go after your dreams, you don't worry about failure. There is no such thing as failure. And that final moment that you do close your eyes, because we all will, but that you really looked back on your life, that you really went for it. You really played full out. You went for your dreams. Yeah, there's mistakes, obviously, that happens, but that you really lived your life fully. You tell people you love them. You get in touch with your own soul powers, because think of the afterlife. You think of they communicate via thought, and that's how feelings come into us or mediums, through thought, through feelings. We can do that too while we're here. Imagine that you are that vibrating energy. Things like thinking positively, being in gratitude, all of that really can make things happen. It's pretty amazing. Is it painful to die? That's a question that I get. And I would say no, it is not painful to die. Now, leading up to death, yeah, that could be. And there are many, many stories that come back from people, even through mediums and trance mediums and near death experiences, that it is our soul leaves our body if we are experiencing intense pain. And so we're taken out, the body still is there, and it may not be a pretty sight, but that's what happened to my dad. He suffered terribly, and I just prayed to God that his soul had left and he wasn't in there. But the actual dying process is easy. People say it's joyful. Roberta Grimes has a book, The Fun of Dying, and it really is closing your eyes and you open them up to a whole new world, even colors that you didn't know existed, and music that you couldn't even have imagined. It really is a delight. Don't rush to get there, because our job here is to learn and discover as much as we can. We chose to come here. I think there's plenty of souls waiting for their opportunity. We get to be here. So don't be upset if things aren't going your way in life. Think, what if? What if this is growth for my soul? And take your steps forward. People that pass from suicide, are they right? Are they wrong? Well, here's the thing. There is no punishment. We cross that finish line. You hear that we have a life review. It is us that gets to look at our life and our past and how well we did. Nobody's judging. There's no heaven for you, hell for you. I believe hell is right here on earth, because it gets pretty tough sometimes. Anyone who crosses are greeted with loved ones, and we are feeling unconditional love. We are safe. We are at home. There is no punishment. So no matter how we get there, we are safe. We are loved, and we get to look back on our life. Children, there's a great organization called Helping Parents Heal, that there's, over almost 15,000 members now. It's a club nobody wants to belong to, nor is any kind of grief, but they do embrace the reality of the afterlife with a lot of grief support. And yes, children grow up in the afterlife. Someone who's your family member or a guide or someone very close will be there with them. Now, there is some magic when we cross over. We can be any age we want, as evident by mediums picking up our loved ones, and they can show us at any age. So if you can't wait to see your 4-year-old again who crossed before you, they can be there at 4 years old. And you are a much more intelligent soul when you cross over, and your love will be there, and you give them a big hug and kiss, okay? And how do you know your loved one is with you? Well, a lot of that is trust. Some people get signs, some people don't. Being a soul made up of energy, they can often manipulate things like lights and people see butterflies and cardinals and things. And is it true? Is it your loved one? How do we know? Well, our loved ones work through our imagination faculty. It's the way they communicate with us, with feelings and thoughts. If you feel good, if you get a sign of whatever kind, or if you think your grandmother's sitting next to you in the car as you drive and you feel good, take that as a sign. Really keep them alive. I know people that still have a seat for their loved one at a dining room table, and keep their memory alive, keep them alive. Our life is here to be learned and experienced. So don't ask them for questions. Should I do with my life? Those kind of things. Just because we cross doesn't mean we have all the answers, but they are there. If you can practice quieting your mind, and even if you think it's your imagination and your loved one shows up, that's how they get through. Okay, so it's very, very important to quiet our mind. That's what the mediums use. Many of these mediums that have done great things at trance, our physical mediums, they all need to how to let their voice get out of the way and be quiet. So with that, I want to give you some different people, places, things that are very, very important. I think they're resources. Like I said, don't believe what I say, but follow up and study some of these things yourself. I won't go through them all now. You can watch the replay, but some great things like ians.org, snui.org, helpingparentsheal.org, Sonia Rinaldi, I'd start with her, rinaldiinstitute.org, many, many more, and you'll really, really be fascinated. As for me and my stuff, I have created We Don't Die Radio, now well over 300 episodes. You can see there my audio, How to Survive Grief. If you go to WeDon'tDieRadio.com, there's a pop-up screen. It says Join Sandra's Insiders Club. That's just a fancy word words for my email list. And you can simply just put in your name and your email. You can unsubscribe anytime. The thing is, I give you a free copy of my book. It says a few chapters. Here's the thing. It's the whole book. I don't want anything to prevent you from having this information because it is so valuable. And having the belief in the afterlife really helps us live our life powerfully, knowing that we can never ultimately get hurt. The audio I told you about in the beginning, How to Survive Grief, you get a free copy of that. All those episodes that I told you about were there. Now we're doing online courses and mediumship events, so you no longer have to travel anywhere to be part of them. We do something called the Sunday Gathering, and since COVID started, we started doing a church service that we want to attend there, me and some of my greatest friends. And there is music, there is prayer, there is an address, there is healing. And something that we do quite differently is, well, many spiritualist churches do this as well, is we do a mediumship demonstration on who's ever in our online audience to let you know that your loved ones are around. So it's really a joy to watch. And if you want to watch proper mediumship, you can see that there. I'm going to leave with this picture, and this is called Goodbye and Welcome from Charles Santosa. Grandma has just crossed over, and of course our mom and their two kids are there and crying at the bedside, and to them, Grandma's gone. To Grandma, there she is with Grandpa and some friends, family, even the dog and cat are right there. You are a divine soul living a human experience. Don't be afraid of death. Trust where you are now is perfect. Live your life fully and get your money's worth out of life. It is very, very difficult to believe 24/7 that the afterlife is real. Surround yourself with people, books, radio shows, whatever that may be, to give you the reminder. And here's something else that can be a reminder. You and I each have one of these, probably, or a computer, probably. We cannot see the wireless internet around us. We can't see radio waves, but they're very, very real. So when you pick up your cell phone, mobile phone, remember that we don't have to understand how something works to know that it's real, that there is this invisible energy around. Your loved ones are around. In fact, right now, wherever you're seated or standing, you've got bunches of people that are cheering you on so that you have the best life possible. So don't let them down. Don't let yourself down. Sometimes the best lesson we have for ourselves is forgiveness. Wherever you are on your path right now is perfectly okay. You are a beautiful soul. You deserve great things. You are special. You are needed. You are loved, and you are one of a kind. So I really want to thank you for viewing this, being here. And again, take a look at WeDon'tDieRadio.com. Surround yourself with the right people. And oh, don't want to forget this. If you're a Facebook user, we have We Don't Die Listeners Facebook group. You can be part of that, and we'll help you remember who you are and have a great life. Bye for now. Thank you.